What is protesting? Well, when people think of protesting, they think of pure violence. But not all protesting tactics are violent. In this presentation, you will see that there are different ways that people can protest, like strikes or marches or boycotts. In 1773, the Parliament passed the Tea Act to help the British get out of the debt after the French Indian War. This act allowed the company to trade its tea directly to the colonists. The colonists refused to buy the British tea because of the tax. So when the shipment of British tea reached the Boston harbor, men disguised as Indians threw overboard 342 chests of tea in protest to the act. In the 1960s, African Americans looked for equal rights. It started in 1955 when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man. For 382 days, they started a boycott against the busing in Montgomery, Alabama. Now, how do they get to work and places that they need to be? Well, they did carpools, they walked, they biked, anything but the bus. And this succeeded because soon after, the Supreme Court ruled that Montgomery must desegregate bus lines. Martin Luther King wanted nonviolent protests, such as the sit-ins, where African Americans who sit in white-only restaurants refused to move. This also created the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. In 1963, King led an all-out attack on racial discrimination in Birmingham, Alabama. He wanted the removal of all restrictions in downtown snack bars, restaurants, and stores. King protested with sit-ins, picket lines, and parades. Hundreds of arrests were made for demonstrating without a permit, loitering, and trespassing, and policemen would use dogs, high-pressure hoses, and cattle probes to control the protesters. Then, on May 8, 1963, an agreement was reached with the city to desegregate lunch counters, restrooms, feeding rooms, and drinking fountains. Marches in other cities were given hope and used Birmingham as their battle cry. On August 28, 1963, Martin Luther King led 250,000 demonstrators to demand an open, desegregated society in Washington, D.C. There, Martin Luther King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Although Martin Luther King Jr. wanted his protests to be non-violent, they soon became violent, because they plagued King's rallies and marches as he took them north to Chicago in 1966 in July. He took his marches into an all-white suburbs of Chicago, where they were stoned and attacked. His goal was open housing. After getting an agreement, the city of Chicago desegregated. The SCLC, Operation Breakbasket, attempted to create new jobs for blacks. Despite Chicago's business leaders agreed to a commitment to open housing, and the Poor People's Campaign, it never became a reality. Race riots took place in 43 cities, leaving 7 dead in 1966 alone. In 1967 was the worst year of riots, with major riots in Detroit and Newark, leaving a total of 77 dead. Riots were caused by racism and bad relations between blacks and police. The riots left African Americans unemployed with poor housing and the need for medical attention. In 1968, King interrupted his efforts to organize a Poor People's Campaign to go to Memphis to rally support for the black workers of the city who were striking for union recognition and a living wage. In reaction, soon after this, Martin Luther King was assassinated. In reaction to this, 130 cities rioted, 21,000 federal troops and 34,000 National Guardsmen were called to stop the riots. In the end, 46 were dead, 3,000 were injured, and there was a $45 million in property damage. The hope of the movement died with King. The feminist movement, also known as the Women's Liberation Movement, refers to a series of political campaigns for reforms on issues such as reproductive rights, domestic violence, maternity leave, equal pay, women's suffrage, sexual harassment, and sexual violence, all of which fall under the label of feminism in the feminist movement. Feminism in parts of the Western world have gone through 3 waves. The first wave was oriented around the station of middle or upper class white women and involved suffrage and political equality. The second wave attempted to further combat social and cultural inequalities. The third wave is continuing to address the financial, social, and cultural inequalities and includes renewed campaigning for greater influence of women in politics and media. In reaction to political activism, feminists have also had to maintain focus on women's reproductive rights, such as the right to abortion. The Black Lives Matter movement started with the hashtag Black Lives Matter on social media after an African-American teen, Trayvon Martin, was shot by George Zimmerman. The Black Lives Matter became nationally recognized for its street demonstration following the 2014 deaths of two African Americans, Michael Brown, resulting in protests and unrest in Ferguson, and Eric Gardner in New York City. Since the Ferguson protests, participants in the movement have demonstrated against the deaths of numerous other African Americans by police actions or while in police custody. In the summer of 2015, Black Lives Matter began politically challenging the politicians, including politicians in the 2016 United States presidential election, to state their positions on BLM issues. The overall Black Lives Movement, however, is a decentralized network and has no formal hierarchy or structure. Now, the Ferguson arrest involves protests and riots that began the day after the fatal shooting of Michael Brown by police officer Darren Wilson on August 9, 2015 in Ferguson, Missouri. The unrest sparked a vigorous debate in the United States about the relationship between law enforcement officers and African Americans. As the details of the original shooting event emerged, police established curfews and deployed riot squads to maintain order. Along with peaceful protests, there was looting and violent unrest of the original shooting. According to media reports, there were police militarization when dealing with protests in Ferguson. The unrest continued on November 24, 2014, after a grand jury did not indict Officer Wilson, and it briefly continued again on the 1-year anniversary of Brown's shooting.
I'm just not going to be done. Today's going to be great, isn't it? I wonder how many people actually got theirs done.
This is.
Ooh!
Kill yourself.
You have a footprint on your ass.
Hey guys, from the hood.
Hey,
Wow, she told you. Can you give me your? Are we done yet?
we're done yet.
Are we done?
Are we done?
Are we done?
How about now?
Are we
Are we
done?
done?
Oh, we're welcome back now.
Let's get a close up of that. Yeah.
That's what she is
We're done?
doing.
No, like really. Cody? Yeah. Floral support.
Janet, stop!